Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. The world was never closer to a nuclear war than during the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962. A nuclear missile could reach Washington from Cuba in just 13 minutes. And that's what we're talking about today, a game from Ultra Pro, a two-player game called 13 Minutes, based off the game that inspired it called 13 Days. In this game, you're going to be taking on one of the superpowers of the United States and Russia, and you're going to be trying to control more battlegrounds without causing a nuclear war. Today, we're going to do a rules school, which means I'm going to first give you a quick 1-minute overview of what's going on during the game. I'm then going to teach you how to set up and then play the game so that you don't have to read the rule book, so let's get going. 13 Minutes is a two-player tactical card game that does take about 13 minutes to play. The game has 13 cards and 13 cubes for each side, and each player is playing one of the two superpowers of Russia or the United States, and they're trying to control different battlegrounds. On your turn, you'll be playing a card to the middle of the table, and you'll be possibly placing command cubes on any of the battlegrounds that already exist. And you'll be pulling cards towards you as you add influence and pulling it away as you pull cubes off it. Sometimes you'll also be able to enact special abilities that are on the different cards. But be careful, because if you enact a card from the other team's superpower, they get to enact the ability first before you get to place the cubes. It's a tug of war, and you're trying to gain points by controlling these different battlegrounds by having more cubes than your opponent. And the player that controls more yellow military battlegrounds will get an extra point, but be careful, because if you have 3 or more of the same color on your side at the end of the game, you've caused a nuclear war and have lost. To set up the game, you're going to take all of the cards, you're going to shuffle them. You're going to deal 2 face down to each player. One player is going to play the United States side, they're going to take the 13 blue cubes. The other side will be played by Russia, and they will take the 13 red cubes. You'll then take that face down deck, and you'll take one card, place it face down in the middle of the table. This is going to be known as the Cuba Battleground. You'll also take the shuffled pile of cards that are face down, you'll place them off to the side because you'll be drawing from these throughout the game. The object of the game is to score the most points, and you do that mostly by controlling different battlegrounds. Every card played on the table is going to be a battleground. This one just happens to be Cuba because it's face down, but other ones will come out throughout the game. All the cards face up will be worth 1 point, Cuba is worth 2 points, and you control it and you'll get the points at the end of the game if you have the majority of cubes. Here there's 2 blue versus 1 red, so United States is going to have this 1 point if this was the end of the game, where Cuba is the only one that's worth 2 points, and the red Russia would lead that right now. Just before the game starts, there is an initiative bid. This only happens once during the game, it's at the beginning. Each player will take a certain amount of their colored cubes in their hand, and they will release them once everybody is ready. Whoever has bid the most cubes, let's say it looked like this, the United States would have the initiative. This means that they get to decide who will go first in the game. Usually it's best to actually go second in this game. Regardless of who won, both players remove these cubes from the game. Each player starts with 13 cubes, but these would be gone. If it is a tie, you give the cubes back and you do it again until someone has won, and then you take those cubes out of the game. The flow of the game is very simple. Each player started with those 2 cards. They're going to select one of those cards, they'll be looking at them, and they'll place one down, and then at the end of their turn, they'll draw back up to 2 cards. That's the flow of the game. Then it just goes to the next player's turn and back and forth. So when it's your turn, you're going to play that card face up onto the board. Now let's say it's the United States' turn. When you play a card, it's known as putting a new battleground. Every card in the game is a battleground. Now think of the table as being 3 zones of a world map. This center zone is a neutral zone. The one right in front of this player is the Russia zone, and right here is the United States zone. When you play a card, it is now known as a battleground, and you can place it either in the neutral zone or in your own zone, your choice. Now, when you play a card, you have, most of the time you'll have a few options. This card here is the United Nations symbol. It's known as a neutral card, which means when either player plays a neutral card, you can either play it for the command, which is the number of cubes there, or you can play it for the event that is written on the card. In this case, let's say we're going to activate the command. Whenever you activate command, you can add up to this many cubes to any single battleground, keeping in mind that Cuba is a single battleground. So maybe this player puts 2 onto Cuba because it's worth 2 points. Now, anytime you place cubes onto a battleground, it moves 1 spot closer to you. Now it's in the United States zone. If this happened to have been in the Russia zone, when I place cubes, regardless of how many, it would come this way. Now, if you take off cubes, which is another option, instead of using the command to place up to 2 cubes, you can use it to take off up to 2 cubes. So let's say I just took off 1. When you take off cubes, it goes to the other side. So every time you place cubes, regardless of how many, it comes to you. If you take them off, it goes 1 step in the opposite direction. In this case, this card started here. We placed 2 cubes. So since we placed cubes, it's going to slide 1 spot towards me. That would be the end of my turn. I would then just draw another card off the top of the deck. And so now I'm back up to 2 cards, and then it would be the Russia's player's turn. So let's say it's the Russia's player's turn, and they're going to play this card. This is a Russia card. In this case, because it's the Russia players playing this card, they can either play it as the command, or they can use the action. In this case, they're going to use the action. This says place up to 4 influence cubes on up to 2 battlegrounds where the Russia player currently has no influence cubes. So let's say they put 2 here and they put 2 here. And because they placed them, even though you're using event, you still move them 1 spot closer to Russia. Now let's say it's the United States' turn again. Let's say they play this card. If you play a card that is the superpower of the other player, that player who has that superpower gets to first enact the event that's on the card. So even though it's the United States' turn, the Russia player can, if they want to, enact this event. This says place up to 2 influence cubes on up to 2 battlegrounds, but the battlegrounds don't move after you place the cubes. So let's say this player does this. They put 2 here. Let's say they put 2 more right there. Now the USA can do their normal command action of 3 cubes on up to on 1 battleground, and they could, let's just say they could place it here, or maybe they want to do this, and because they put it here, this would now slide over just like that. And this continues back and forth. That player, United States, would draw a card so they have back up to 2, and you would continue going back and forth. Now keep in mind that when you use that command action, you can use it to take off cubes. Let's say this player's getting low on cubes, it's their turn. Let's say they play this and they want to use the command action of 2. They can take off up to 2 cubes on any one battleground. Let's say they take these off because they need cubes, and because they took it off, it would slide here. So don't forget that you can take them off because you may and probably will run out of cubes at some point during the game. Now this continues back and forth until each player has only 1 card in their hand and no cards left in the draw pile. Then we go on to final scoring. By default, all the battlegrounds are worth 1 point, Cuba is worth 2 points, and you control it by having more cubes on it. So USA has more cubes here, so they get a point. Here it's tied. If it's tied and it's in your sphere of influence, you win it. So the United States wins this for 2 more points, so they have 3. They have 4 because they own this one, and they have 5 because they have this one. These 2 are tied, but if it's in the middle neutral zone and they're tied, nobody gets it. So the United States has a total of 5. Russia has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're tied here. Even though there's no cubes here, it's still a tie, and it's in their sphere of influence, so they get a point there. So Russia is up right now, 6-5. Next, we would flip over the Cuba card. Now, once that card's flipped over, we look at all of the battlegrounds that have a yellow symbol on them. Those are the military battlegrounds. If you notice, all those have a 1+. This is because at the end of the game, whoever controls the most military battlegrounds will get an additional point. So we have this one. We already said the United States won this one because it's tied, but it's on their side. So they have this one. The United States has won this one because they have more cubes, and Russia has won that one. So USA had won 2-1. They control more, and in this case, USA would now get an additional point. And so now it's tied 6-6. If there's a tie for how many military battlegrounds, then nobody gets the extra point. Then we'll look at the last 2 cards. If you remember, each player has 1 card left. They're going to place that card in front of them. Now this was the United States side, but they had a Russia card. This has 2 cubes on it. This one has a UN symbol, which means it doesn't count for either of the superpowers. Whichever superpower this shows, that's how many cubes. You add up the cubes for this superpower, you add up the cubes for the other superpower. Whoever has more cubes, regardless of how many more, gets the additional single point. So in this case, even though USA had this and played it at the end of the game, it goes towards Russia. So Russia would get a point, and so now they're leading 7-6. If it were tied for the aftermath cards for a certain superpower, or there were nothing for either superpower, neither player gets the aftermath point. However, even though it looks like the USSR player won, they actually didn't, because if both of the aftermath cards have the same color icon on it, regardless of color, if they're both the same, then they have to be placed actually in their side as an actual card. So now this actually becomes part of their side, and now you look, if either side has 3 or more of the same color, that player causes a nuclear war and loses. In this case, Russia has 3 yellows, so they would lose the war. It doesn't matter what color, but if you have 3 or more of the same color, United States could possibly lose. They have only 2 of each, so no worries. So as long as you have 3 or more of any one color, you automatically lose by nuclear war. It is possible for both players to lose by nuclear war. If neither player lost by nuclear war, whoever has the most points at this point wins. If it's a tie at the end, the one who has the most battlegrounds in their sphere of influence would win. If that's still a tie, then play again. You can also play a campaign game, which is multiple games in a row, to see who the first is to get 13 prestige points. If at any time during the campaign, which is multiple games, a nuclear war happens, that player loses the entire campaign regardless of points. If it's tied and both players get the 13 prestige, then whoever has won the last game wins. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into the game and got you enjoying the game quicker than you normally would by skipping the rulebook. Now, if you still have questions, I put a link in the description of this video. That link is going to bring you to the best place to place questions, because not only will I see them and be able to answer them, but so will the publisher and the designer and possibly even the developers. Thanks for watching.